Hello, I'm Ronnie Moore, and today I painted this autumn scene. All the details about it, the paper and the paints, will be listed in the description. And in this video, I'm going to show you step by step how it was done. If you like the video, if you find it useful, then please subscribe and like. And if you want to be informed of further videos, please click on the bell. Thanks. So here we go. Okay, so now we'll get into it here. Down at the bottom of the painting, I've painted some little ferns in masking fluid. Most of you will, I'm sure, know what masking fluid is. For those who don't, it's a liquid latex. This one is slightly tinted blue. And any place where you don't want the paint to hit, you paint it in that. Afterwards, you can remove it and it shows up just the paper from underneath. And then you can paint it in a lighter colour, because watercolour is transparent, and so you cannot paint light. You can't paint light over dark. So if you want light in the middle of an area that's very dark, you're better off to either paint around it, or sometimes you can dab it off with a tissue, or use masking fluid. So I'll leave that as it is. It's dry now, so I can go ahead with this. Now, as you will have seen from the finished painting, which I haven't seen yet, but when my brilliant grandson, who's here now videoing me, when he has it in at the end, he will be able to, when I have the painting done, he'll be able to show it to you at the beginning. So you'll see the different tones, and tones are very important in a painting. So to put the distance in, I'm using nice mauves and blues and very pale greens and yellows, because they're away from you, and things get a bit bluer and paler when they're away from you. So I've already mixed up a little bit of lavender here, actually. Lavender with a tiny bit of this alizarin here, just to warm it up. I put alizarin in just to warm it up a bit. So that's for in at the base of the trees, at the back of the painting. And now I'm going to make some yellows. I'm using Aureolin, which is my favorite yellow. I use different brands of paints. I use a lot of Winsor Newton, but I use Holbein and I don't know if that's how you pronounce it actually, and Schmidt. I won't attempt to pronounce that one. But anyway, you know, they're all pretty good really. All art is professional quality. And so I'll show you the Aureolin. I just love it. Winsor Newton stopped making this and I thought my career was over. And then I found it in one of the other brands. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It's really beautiful. And then to make greens out of that, you can make lovely greens with French ultramarine. This is French ultramarine. Where the two meet, you can see that there's beautiful greens there. And you can also use yellow ochres, which I will be doing, and you can warm them up with burnt sienna. I'll just show you some of the colours I'll be using now. That's the yellow ochre. With the blues, they make a much more earthy, dull green. But I never use green, never ever buy green. I always like to make them from the yellows and the blues. And the burnt siennas, can't forget burnt sienna, because burnt sienna is a fantastic colour. So this is the burnt sienna. So the scene we're doing, as you can see, is a kind of an autumn scene. And brown madder alizarin is a red that I love. It's a kind of a savoury tomato red. It's not a sweetie pinky red. And I love it as well too. And it goes very well with the burnt siennas if you want to just make a mixture of those. So see, it's kind of a tomato red. And of course, to make all of these lighter, you add water. So you can get them as strong as that. There's a couple of other paints that I may or may not use. I might put in a shot of something for the fun of it. But basically, so I'm going to do paler versions of these now for the background. And I'm going to just block in all the areas. I'm going to block in all the areas of the painting. The detail, a lot of watercolour is just suggestion. So if you block in all those loose patches of colour, and then you bring in the trees, and okay, I have some detail, I have the children, and I have a boat. They come in afterwards. So that when you look at it, you think, gosh, there's an awful lot of detail in that painting. But in actual fact, there's only a couple of little bits of detail. The rest of it is your brain suggestion to you that there is. And that's hopefully, anyway, that's the idea. So here we have a good few of the light washes for the distance made up. I've penciled in the stronger areas of it, and I haven't penciled in where I want it to be very light. And I normally use as light pencil markings as I can. For the camera, I've made it a little bit heavier than what I usually do. Okay, so the technique I'm going to be using is wet into wet. And that's when, oh God, sorry about that. That's when you wet the page. So the page is wet, your paint is wet. It's as simple as that. So the page is going to be wet now with the sponge. You can spray it if you like, or you can put it on with the brush. I like to put it on with the sponge. If you think it's a little bit too wet, you can wring it out a bit, or even just wait 30 seconds and it'll be a little bit drier. Okay, this is a brush. Do you know, I don't put all that much importance on brushes actually. I know that sounds silly, but I don't really. But this is a nice one, Princeton 16. But sometimes, you know, I might just use a cheaper brush if it's closer to me. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to start with this area here in the distance. Sometimes I might just mix another little maybe bluer part through it. But I'll be putting more details into that. Always have some paper beside you as well. So washing the brushes, I want now put that more up into the higher areas as well. It can even be little bits in here where there might be seen between the trees. Okay, clean that off. We'll go for the yellows. Love these colours. And remember, yellows are opposites to purple on the colour wheel, which of course always gives nice effect. Put them in the burnt sienna that's mixed with the brown madder as well. I'm not even bothering washing the brush there because I don't care if they're both on it. I'll be putting a bit more detail into this, but I can use stronger bits as it's coming out into maybe where you want to have a little bit of effective leaves and that. Greens. This is all very light. I'll be doing darker bits over that now before it dries even. I'll be doing very dark greens here over this. So you can do dark as you like over light, but you can't do the opposite unless you're doing some technique or other. Be doing a couple of those. Aren't the colours just gorgeous? And the autumn colours are fabulous. This is actually a place outside Killarney. I live in Killarney in County Kerry in the very, very south of Ireland. And there's a place called the Blue Pool. And it's a very mystical kind of a place. And I absolutely love it. Love going out there. Great place to bring the dogs to for a little run around because there's usually nobody there. Might see an odd deer or something, but that's all. Okay. A little bit of heavier greens there, just slightly heavier, going up into. You can be mixing heavier little bits here as you go as well. Oops, maybe a little bit too heavy for the background. Those colours are really nice. A little bit of really darker bluey green for some distant little leaves. You can actually use little bits of sponges as well for putting on leaves, which is a bit of fun sometimes. You can get heavier as you go on then. I mean, you can put heavier bits on top of that, like little bits of red as well. I used to be very, very conservative in the colours that I used, but and I still am here actually, but in general I get a little bit braver. Like I might get an idea of just putting in a shot of indigo or turquoise or something just for the fun of it. And may or may not do that, but okay, so that's kind of the background. There'll be heavier colours put over that now in a while. Then with a smaller brush, or with the point even of a brush, you could make some effects of trees just coming up in a kind of grey blue colours. For that now I've just mixed a bit of the French ultramarine blue with a tiny bit of burnt sienna. You could put a little bit of the purple into it as well if you wanted. I mean, you could do this in any shades as long as you're getting that kind of very vague colour there. One of the problems that I still run into is making things too light. Watercolour pales as it dries, and sometimes I don't get that right and I make it too pale. I underestimate. Now remember, this is drying all the time, and so as it's drying you'll be putting in little bits of leaves and branches and all of that, and as well as bringing these little bits of trees up. Very pale, but enough that they're not going to disappear completely. You could use a very small brush for this if you want. Sometimes I think, if you have a brush that has a bit of a point on it, it doesn't matter so much. You can use it for different parts of the painting. Where the land meets the water, there's always that little bit of darkness around it there too. You don't want to be doing it in a straight line. You can dampen it again to get a looser effect. I like using the side of my brush a lot for this. Just little bits of, see, with this, the very flat bit, where you're right down to the metal on the page. Can you see that far away vegetation taking shape now? Now I'd stay with the upper part of the painting, and one very good reason for that is it stops you putting your arm. If I start down here, I'd have it destroyed. So for different shades of green now, I can put in some mid-greens. I've just used stronger colours. That makes them very dark. I have a spray bottle here too, and if it gets too dry when I'm doing this, I just use the spray. And actually I could be using a bigger brush now too. Again, just with the side of the brush. As you're coming out here too, you can be using the point of your brush for. So it's no longer, what we're doing here now is painting into slightly damp, as opposed to what we were doing a minute ago, which was painting wet into wet. We're now doing wet into damp. And it's not even that very wet, because we're making it stronger, we're making it thicker. Put a bit up there now. Sometimes I like using this is a much cheaper brush, it's a Richard Oliver, and sometimes for using that side brush effect, sometimes I prefer to use the cheaper brushes. You can see the value of having this thing here, because you mightn't like it, and not everybody does like it, but it just gives it lets you relax a bit, and because you have little bits of it all made up already. Right, so I'm making this part. See, just lightly touching it like that. Some darker bits coming down here. You're not going to see every leaf in detail. When you're painting a tree, always remember that if you want to, sometimes you see people painting the whole trunk of the tree and then thinking about the leaves. But in fact, when you look at a leaf that has a lot of foliage on it, you don't see the whole trunk of the tree because some of it is obliterated by the leaves. And so that's why we're going to do a few leaves like that. And when we're doing the trunk of the tree, we go up as far as there, skip it and continue up. And what you can do as well too, like I don't necessarily want that tree to be green. So with a damp brush, you can just remove some of the paint. I go back and forth between brushes. You have your own favorite brushes for doing little bits of things at a time. You can do more of that at the end anyway, these little dry bits. But you need contrast too, even just like that little area of contrast. Definitely it's an important thing to have bits of contrast. Yeah, we'll do more of that later. So I'm going to leave the boat, the trees, and in the foreground and all that, to the end. And the little dog, if he's still there, if he doesn't get painted over and forgotten about. I can do a lot of that afterwards. And remember, if you think something has got a little bit too definite, you can just spray it. It's nice to do that anyway. And if you get too warm, you can use it on your face. Okay, so now we're going to do the water and the reflections. Now, we're going to do much the same as what we did already. Because remember, when you're doing reflections, always keep the brush strokes down. I think I'll wet it again actually there. Keep the brush strokes going downwards for reflections. Make a nice little bit of blue as well, I think, into it. Remember what you're reflecting. You're reflecting the greens and the blues and all. You can, you don't worry too much about painting over the people because you can dab them off afterwards. You can try to avoid them if you can, but come right down to. But we're concentrating right now on the reflections. So I'm getting stronger and stronger here. And to make dark colours, just the French ultramarine and the burnt sienna is really, really good for doing that. So I might just make some very dark lines across here. Those trees as well. It's nice putting them into wet actually because they get, it's a little bit looser. The way reflections are kind of much looser then. I want to paint around the little kids. If you don't paint right up to them, you'll have this little white halo around them all. And most kids aren't angels. One thing about watercolours is, that's what I give workshops, and I always tell people when they're kind of despairing over what they're doing, and they admit afterwards that it is so true, that watercolours have a habit of coming together in the end in ways that you don't fully trust that they are going to come together in the end. And they do. It kind of all pulls together at the end. You have all these wet washes and you don't know what's happening. And then it all just gets pulled together at the end, like by the trees or by the detail of something or other. If you ever come to Killarney, it's really nice to go for a walk in the Blue Pool. Nobody goes there really. That's why I bring the dogs. meant to keep that around, I meant to keep that quite white around the reflection of the boat. I forgot about that. Keeping the boat clear there by just water and keeping this, the part of the child's coat as well. Right, now this is still, I don't, you know, the art, paint, watercolour is a lot about soft lines and hard lines. And there's not, like for instance, that tree will have a hard line. It's a definite thing. But say foliage down here, you don't want that to have a hard line. Do you know what I mean? That wants to be soft. So you want to make sure that you keep all this area kind of soft. Where I have the masking tape here, I want it to be really dark behind that so that you'll see the contrast when I remove it. Now you mightn't know exactly what I mean now, but you will. I want to have that lighter actually. Put in some trees here now as well. So you can skip bits where the foliage is. Bring out some branches. Make some bluer, paler ones in there. Get some of this really dark. Indigo is a gorgeous colour as well that I often get tempted to use, even if I don't think I have any out there, but I might use some. But another way of doing trees is that actually, supposing I had drawn those little dark trees, but actually you could make them light by painting both sides around them and having the foliage more dense. I want to get more and more detailed as we come forward, but still keep that not very precise in the background. Always darken in at where the land meets the water, but try not to do it like a stripe. And if you do do it like a stripe, then just get a damp brush afterwards and blend it in a bit below and above. Darken little bits of it, particularly under the branches, like where the branches are coming out. Darken the trees a bit under those. It's like standing under an umbrella, you know, there'll be shadows under. Same if you're ever doing a flower as well too, you know, the underneath the bowl of the flower, if you like, you know, the stem is always that little bit darker because it's in the shade. I'm being lazy now because I have some very fine brushes for doing this, but if you gently use the very tip of your brush, and again, this is the Richard Oliver brush, this very cheap brush actually, so I don't always use good brushes. Right, so I can use, where's the little brush I like? See this little one, Rigger, they call this one. It's good for doing the branches. When you're doing the branches, use lighter colour paint as well. Because if you think of it, anything that's very, very pale or very small, you don't see it as being as dense in colour. And always have, you know, think of branches as crisscrossing as well, like rather than having a tree with spikes out the side of it, you know, the branches go everywhere. They're beautiful trees in Killarney. I'm not too good at the names of trees, but where I live here, there's an oak forest opposite where I live, and it's the oldest oak forest in Europe. A lot of people who are interested in botany and that kind of thing come here to look at it. It's not on the tourist beaten track at all, but people who are interested in old forests and that come. That's not what I'm painting now. I'm painting the blue pool, which is different. Just finish off this little bit before I go on and make the... And when I'm making the colours for the foreground now, they'll be stronger again because they're coming closer to you. And when you think of it, everything in the background, there's more atmosphere between you and the background, so the colours are muted. Paler. They're paler, but they get brighter and stronger when they come up to the front. Actually, we just took a little bit of a break there. I was just sketching in a few more branches and bringing up this tree. I've decided I'm going to wait a minute to do the foreground. I'm going to do the trees next. So, okay, so is there any answer to the question, what colour is a tree? No, there isn't. A tree can be any colour depending on the light that's shining on it. But even if you do see a brown tree, they can be very boring, you know. So always try and get a little bit of colour into the tree. So I'm going to do, put on some blue. Even you could do a little bit of bits of purple, a little bits of burnt sienna, leave bits of it white even. I'm going to use a technique now and know how to put heavy bark effect on it, hopefully by sprinkling a bit of salt on it. I don't know if any of you have ever done that before, but it can be very effective because it creates a bit of a texture, and you need to get the paint on pretty quick, and a good contrast of dark bits. Put in some pink as well. I like pink in the tree. Remember, it's your tree. You can do what you like. It doesn't have to correspond to any rules or regulations. But you do want to get it on. So I'm making the dark by, I've got burnt sienna, I've got French ultramarine. I probably even have a little bit of green in there, a little bit of yellow, in other words. Bits of burnt sienna. You see that when the salt goes on this, and when it dries, it'll lift some of it off. And that's what we're kind of looking for. So you want it nice and strong in places. And remember, it's round. Remember, the tree is round, so you can make the effects of it round. Your brush marks round, I mean. Okay, I'm going to do more with that now. It looks very messy now. I'm just going to sprinkle a bit of ordinary salt on, but not too much. And when that dries, we'll shake it off. And that'll create a bit of texture. And we can work on that then. Looks a bit messy now, but as I say, it'll be all right in the night. What's the saying? It'll be all right in the end, and if it's not all right, it's not the end. That was from the Best Marigold Hotel film. I love that quotation. It applies so much to watercolour. Okay, here's It's a colour that I call dark. I just call it dark, and it's a mixture of whatever you've got there that makes dark. And it's mostly French ultramarine and burnt sienna. And remember, look, this is the important thing. Underneath where the foliage is, make it just that little bit darker. Like I was saying about being under the umbrella, your head's going to be darker where the umbrella is shadowing your head. I'm making that very dark there because that little branch, well, it's a big branch actually, that's coming out. It's kind of like another secondary part of the tree nearly. And it's going in behind that part of the tree. So you can scrape with your nail as well too, just to give a little bit of the effect of the bark. Put a little bit of salt there as well. Don't forget to shake it off afterwards. If you frame the picture, you'll see the little bits of salt. Down to the bottom.
3D.
Yeah. When you're putting in the tree, then you're breaking up that big mass of green and whatever else. Remember, trees are kind of rough. They grow in spurts, and then they grow a little bit this way, and then the wind might push them that way, and they grow another little bit, and they grow another little bit. Like they're never just, very seldom, just straight. There's always exceptions to every rule, but in general, think of it as, I heard somebody saying once, that if you have a very shaky hand, you do better trees. And the branches that come off trees come off in different sides and all of that. You seldom have one coming there and another one coming right opposite it. The other one will be a little bit further up or whatever. And then the branches get thinner every time. When one branch comes off the tree from there on up is that much thinner. And then every time a branch branches out into another branch, it gets thinner as it goes up. I've made that a bit too solid colour. I don't like that because I don't like brown trees. Put a bit of blue on it. I'm very impatient to get the salt to dry. Right. I want to leave this boat light colour because, I was saying before about focal points and that's just at that third intersection there or thereabouts. So I want to leave it quite light, at least the body of it. There's some lovely places to go by boat around Killarney, around all the lakes and onto the islands and that. Really nice. Which way is the light coming? I suppose the light's coming in this way. And so we'll make this part of the boat a little bit darker. No. Okay, so that's one little area of contrast there at that third intersection. Okay, so now we've got the foreground and we've got the children. I'm just going to make up what those children I just drew them out of my head, and I'm going to put a little bit of green on the tree, maybe a little bit of bright yellow or bright green. I think I think because of purple and green, and that there's a little bit, I don't know if the camera's picking it up or not, but this is quite lavender kind of colour back here, and then you have the yellows, and as I say, they're opposites on the colour wheel. And so I might just use cadmium yellow. I use cadmiums whenever. The cadmium is much more opaque. The colours that I use in watercolour are generally transparent. They're by far the nicest colours to use. But if I want something to stand out a bit, I might use the cadmiums, like the cadmium yellow or the cadmium red. There's cadmium red. You know, you could do this exact same painting using different colours and having like less of the reds in it, and having blue in the front for bluebells and that. That's the cadmium red now, and as you can see, it's pretty it's pretty strong. Actually, come to think of it, I don't have any really good purple. I just have the pale purple. But anyway, I couldn't find my... I usually use Windsor Violet, but I couldn't find it. I don't know where it is. I just don't know. I'm just painting in his jacket, or her jacket, his jacket, I think. Of course, I can make the purples as well if I wanted from... It's amazing to think that there are only 3 colours in watercolour. There's only 3 colours at all: red, yellow and blue, and everything else is a mixture of that. And I don't use blacks either. I use French ultramarine and burnt sienna. That'll take you down through all the browns into black. So really, with very few colours, you can do an awful lot. I think I'll make a nice effect of a plaid. Now, so that's that much done. So now, apart from waiting for this to dry, the salt, we can really go in with the strong colours at the bottom now. So I'll just mix those up. Put a bit more the bark on that. You can always have little bits of those twiggy things that come up from the base of the trees, which are kind of... Don't be afraid to cross over things that you've drawn or painted. Just put a little bit of hair down here. Okay, now just going to make up all of this. I'll still leave the salt because it's not dry yet. It won't be dry for a while. And so I'm going to just do all this part. And remember, I have masking fluid on here, so I want the dark part, the dark paint, to be in behind that, so that that can come forward afterwards when I remove it. Right, so what colours will I make up here? Remember, it's autumn. Sometimes I kind of inclined to forget. I dropped a bit of turquoise into that burnt sienna by mistake. I know this is probably an odd way to work with this contraption here that I have, but I really like it. I really like working that way. Okay, so I have that. I have strong yellow, so I'm going to get much stronger now as I'm coming in, and I need some really dark. I might actually use a bit of Prussian blue actually, because Prussian blue is very good for it. Prussian blue is that kind of, that sort of greeny blue. It's kind of, well, that's it. That's not it. That colour there. It's kind of nice at the front to make something very, very dark. Might mix it with a bit of burnt sienna to make it darker again. Okay. Right, so here we go. Oh, what I should do is I should wet. Remember I was saying about soft colours, soft edges. You want soft edges here. You don't want a soft edge at the edge of the tree, because the tree is an object with a shape, and the boat is an object with a shape. But where you're coming down into foliage, you want a soft edge. Do you know this little rigger? Yeah, rigger, isn't it? What do you call it? It's very handy for bringing up very thin kind of grasses and all that. It's kind of nice to use it. See, we won't be able to rub off the masking fluid until this is all dry. In the workshops, it happens so often that some of the people at the workshops is despairing and say, "Oh, this is terrible. This is just awful." And then at the last minute, they say, "Oh yeah, gosh, it's coming together now." So, nil desperandum, desperate. Don't despair. The other thing about it too that I always do at the workshops is I keep a frame that fits the paper that they're using, and so they can see their painting in a frame at the end of it, and it's amazing the difference that makes to them. Sometimes they don't even recognize it as their own. I've had people who were very critical of their work, and then they see in the frame, I put it in without them seeing me putting it in, and then they say, "Gosh, that's lovely. Who did that?" I say, "Well, you did actually." That happens quite often, which is always very funny. You can go on forever at this, bringing out bits of branches. You're never going to be able to paint all the branches in a forest, but you can try. If you keep one of these rigger brushes as well for using the masking fluid, you could put some very fine lines. I think I've actually done a couple, so that you can have this lighter effect of grasses. I generally don't use white, but this is the big discussion always about watercolours. Should you use white? I used to be a real purist about that, but I'm not anymore. If I wanted to use white now, I'd use it. I don't really like it though. It makes it's not transparent, and it makes it a little bit heavier. But it works like if you, like for instance, if you weren't using this masking fluid and you really wanted to put something pale green on top of the dark, you could mix the white with a little bit of the yellow and blue, and it would be more opaque, that you'd have some chance of putting it over. So I suppose it's not right to be too much of a purist. It's annoying. Okay, we took a little break there for a few minutes, and I used the hairdryer and just drying this up just to speed it up a little bit. So now I'm going to rub off the salt. It's already kind of fallen off anyway. And I don't know, I hope the camera's picking it up, but you can probably see the texture on the tree, hopefully. Just gives a roughness to the texture. I didn't do it on this one, I just scraped this one. Now, the masking fluid is still on here, so I'm going to rub it off. Now, there is a little special rubber thing for doing this, but and I do have it, but like a lot of things I have, I don't know where they are, so I usually use my fingers anyway. So that's rubbing the latex or the rubber where I had painted it on. It's rubbing it off so that I can paint lighter colours on top of them. A bit like batik. It's kind of batik style. Many's the time I used to dye t-shirts and something like that. To be honest, I still do a little bit of it. Did a pair of jeans recently. Right, so what colours now? I'll just do a very light colour just so that you can see what I mean. Like the ferns. See, I would never have been able to paint that fern over the dark. Do you know what I mean? Just to settle them in a little bit more with a small brush, if I can find one, the point of a brush, rather. If I can't find one, I'll use the rigger. There it is. I drive my daughters mad being disorganised and losing things. They think I'm going to be one of those people that gets lost in the mess in their house and has to be rescued. Hasn't happened yet, though. I'm just grounding these in a little bit more. Do you know, when you're doing the foreground, you use less horizontal shapes. Like it's not so much relevant in this because there's not a whole lot horizontal going on in this. But if you were doing mountains and landscape and all this, think about that. That when you come up close, you're doing a lot more of this kind of stroke. Whereas if you did that in the background, there would be huge things in the background. This is where you just keep going until it's silly, really, until somebody comes and takes you away from the painting. Step back from the painting. I'd say Glenn's about ready to do that. Let's go and get something to eat, please. The important thing is to really enjoy painting. And the paintings that you enjoy most are the ones where your concentration is at the tip of the brush, where you're actually enjoying making the marks. I think everything else comes together. I'm not exactly doing that now because I'm kind of concentrating on the finished product and all that. But the important thing is to have a bit of fun with painting, really. So, just going back a little bit on what I've done. I started off with a blank page, which is always terrifying because this is a very expensive paper. And I made up all the washes here for the first part, and then I just continued making them up as I went away. I know it's not the way most people work, but some people do, and I just like having the little pots of paint ready rather than constantly mixing. But it's nice to do it all kinds of ways and then find the way that you like best. So that's it. So that's the blue pool in watercolour, and I hope you enjoyed that and got something out of it. So that's it finished. I hope you enjoyed the video. I have other videos where I've elaborated on some of the techniques that I've used in this particular painting. So please feel free to have a look at those. And once again, please like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe. And if you want to be informed of further videos that come up, please click on the bell. So thanks for joining me. I really enjoyed painting it and I enjoyed having you here. So hopefully see you in the next video.